Paraphrasing / slight shortening of "We Need to Talk About 55" by QNTM. If there's a different way of saying that, I don't know it. I'll have both his link and the link to the story itself in the description. Marianne Wheeler sat in the receptionist area of an O5 office. "Can I smoke?" she asked the receptionist. No, you can't smoke anywhere on Site 200. Just because it's an administration building doesn't mean we don't have lungs or labor law. Marina notices the young lady's exasperation. I've asked you that before, haven't I? Twice in the last quarter hour. You must really need that smoke. She seems genuinely puzzled at the repeated question, and she's doing a bad job of concealing it. You think this is a bit like Memento, don't you? You think I have no long-term memory, and if I stay in one place for too long, I forget why I'm there. The receptionist is only just old enough to remember the film, I guess. She smiles sympathetically and shakes her head. It's nothing so simple. Minutes pass. Marianne plays with her lighter obsessively. She's turning 50 this year and is slowly graying. Well, out of petite and on towards little old lady. In her bag, her cell phone beeps because it's time for a pill, but she tells it to remind her later. There's a slight tremble in her fingers, but that's not age-based infirmity. It's just ordinary nerves. She's nervous because she's here to meet an O5. And O5s are scary. O5s never want to see you for a small thing. It's the end of the world or nothing. Finally, 40 minutes later, the inner office doors open. 5 high-ranked foundationers spill out carrying laptops and briefcases. As a group, they head straight past reception and out to cars that are waiting. Marianne recognizes a few of the face. The Site 19 director, head recruiter for the Western Europe. None of them glance at her. Once they're gone, O5-8's assistant pokes his head around the door. He's a 20-something and probably youthful. He looks like a teenager stuffed into one of his dad's business shirts. His haircut is barely in regulation. In one hand, he holds a tablet showing the boss's day planner. It's packed. Apparently, the O5 doesn't need sleep. Marianne, you can come through now. The office door closes behind them with a heavy clunk, as if it's part of the office walls. While Marianne takes the indicated chair and sets her bag down, the assistant turns and does the same confusing additional things to the door, causing it to make several further strange noises. O5s have non-trivial privacy and security requirements. The office is spacious, but seems to be dark, despite 2 big corners of windows and broad daylight outside. The walls are bookshelves with dark paneling, stylish, but a style from the 90s. Worn, and not yet old enough to be fashionable again. As for the O5, well, an O5 will never look like you imagine. Marianne takes a deep breath. So, what's the topic? All I got for the meeting was an invitation. No agenda or subject. I mean, an O5 says jump, you jump, but... Looking to her right, she notices that the assistant, without saying anything, making any undue noise, has set his tablet down on the table and aimed a gun at her head. Marianne has stopped talking. She sits still in her chair for a little while, absorbing the change of pace, letting her heart rate raise a little to a hummingbird's pace, and then start to flatten again. Okay, she hazards, licking her lips and grips the armrest, otherwise staying perfectly still, waiting for another prompt. The assistant's face is totally neutral now, like this is just how meetings go. Maybe it is for people up here. Who are you? O5-8 asks her. What? Oh god. Let me rephrase. O5-8 says, Marianne Wheeler, 49, with loving husband and 2 boys in tow. Likes camping, hiking, and ornithology. boring mother with perfectly airtight background and financial as far back as we can examine. And you've got full foundation credentials, which we have never issued, including access to a list of installations and rooms which some of these locations don't exist or were torn down decades ago. At least one hasn't been built yet you've got the front door key to it. That's before we get to your SCP access control list, which I can only term as egregious. So you're a spy, and your objectives are misaligned with ours, and Clay wanted to cut XI-3 loose on you, but I was able to bring him around. I talked him into it face to face. I thought there was a slim chance that if we locked you in a bomb-proof room and asked politely, you'd have the good sense to spare yourself the rest. Marion has long stopped listening. You dullard, she says now that she can finally speak. I'm your chief of antimemetics. We don't have an antimemetics division, Clay says. Yes, you do. Yes, we do. 05-8 says we have a memetics division, a telecontainment division, fire services, Ops A, Ops B, personnel, D personnel, and 24 others. We don't have an antimemetics division. Do we have an irony division? Marion asks. She hesitates hopefully. No? Alright. I'll try this. Why do you think the antimemetics division would show up in the listing? This is just a cover story. It says to 05-8, not taking his eyes off of Marion. It's a good one, but she's had it worked out well in advance. Clay, lose the piece, says the 05. Grudgingly, Clay puts it away. Marion relaxes fractionally. There are SCPs with dangerous memetic properties, she says. They are contagious concepts which require containment just like any physical threat. They get inside your head and ride your mind to reach other minds, right? Right, says the 05-8. He can name a score of SCPs fitting the description without even thinking. There are SCPs with antimemetic properties. Marion goes on. They are ideas which cannot be spread. These are entities and phenomenon which harvest and consume information, particularly information about themselves. You take a Polaroid photo of one, it'll never develop. You write a description down with a pen on paper, and it to someone, but what you've written turns out to be hieroglyphs, and nobody can understand them, not even you. You look directly at one, and it won't even be invisible, but you'll still perceive nothing. Dreams you can't hold on to, and secrets you can never share, and lies and living conspiracies. It's a conceptual subculture of ideas consuming other ideas, and sometimes segments of reality. Sometimes people. Which makes it a threat. That's all there is to it. Anti-memes are dangerous, and we don't understand them. Therefore, they're the problem. Hence my division. We can do the sideways thinking that's needed to combat. Something which can literally eat your combat training. 05 stares back at her while Clay physics, disliking and distrusting everything she said. But the 05 seems more open to the concept. Name one. Name an antimemetic SCP. SCP-55. Marion immediately says, there is no SCP-55. Clay retorts. Again, yes, there is. Marion says, there isn't. SCP numbers aren't assigned sequentially. They're gaps. That number hasn't been assigned. It's not superstition. We have enough to be concerned about without arbitrary numerological mysticism. We have SCP-666 and 13, but there's no 01 and there's no 05, Clay asserts. Clay, says 05-8. We should look at this. He turns his computer monitor so Clay can see the file that he just retrieved. As Clay reads it from top to bottom, stunned, he scrolls back and reads it a second time. The file's from 2008, says the 05. It's got all the right flags and signatures. It's keyed and coded. It's real. You've seen this before? Clay asks him. Never in my life. As far as I can remember anyway. On the other hand, if the containment is accurate, both of us have probably seen it dozens of times, says the 05. Clay glares at Marion. This isn't possible. For Christ's sakes, Clay, how long have you been working here? Marion nearly spits. But if this SCP is powerful, yes. Who wrote the file? The 05 finishes. And For that matter, how was the interview conducted? And who is Bartholomew Hughes? And most importantly, how do you, Miss Wheeler, retain knowledge of any of this? Bart Hughes wrote the file. He's dead. What happened to him? You don't want to know. There's a very long pause while 05-8 and his assistant react to this. In fact, they passed through... crap, my phone scrolled. In fact, they passed through a long, discrete sequence of reactions. Indignation at the seeming rudeness, confusion at Wheeler's caution in front of sinister superiors, surprise at the magnitude of the calm, pure disbelief, apprehension, and finally horror. What, asked the 05-8, would happen if we did know? It would happen to you as well. As for the rest of your questions, we manage that pharmaceutically. You know we have Class A amnestics for people who very badly need to forget things. Of course you do. Who could forget about Class A amnestics? Well, in antimemetics, we have a different pill. For people who need to remember things that would otherwise be impossible to remember. Mnemestics, classes W, X, Y, and Z. Same group word, same group Greek root as the word mnemonic. The M is silent. In her bag, her phone beeps again. With approval from the 05, Marion reaches into her bag and turns the phone off, acknowledging the prompt this time instead of postponing it. She pulls a blister pack from another pocket and pops a pill out. It's hexagonal and green. She holds it up and is satisfied to see a flicker of recognition on 05-8's face. He's beginning to put it back together. And says, these are Class W mnemestics. The weakest suitable for continuous use. 2 pills per day. Go down to the site pharmacy and ask. The pharmacist will claim they don't stock any such thing. They're misremembering. Tell them to double check. The 05 sighs, and now I think I get it. I see why we're having this conversation at all. Yes, Marion says, popping a second pill out and handing it over to him. It's because you missed a dose. You're supposed to be on these, the same as me and everybody on my staff. It's the only way we can work. You forgot your pill, and then you forgot everything the pill makes you remember. You forgot why you were taking them, who gave them to you, and where to get more. You forgot about me, the department, and now I have to bring you back up to speed. And if I take this, the 05-8 says, I'll remember this whole conversation, and we won't have to have it again. Hopefully not. She confirms. Clay pipes up. Should I be taking those? Sorry, kiddo. The 05 says, need to know. Maybe when you're in 05 yourself. He swallows the pill. Marion swallows her too. So what is SCP-055? The 05 asks. 055 is nothing. It is, as described in the file, a powerful information autosuppressor. As far as experimentation has uncovered, it can be only defined in negative terms. We can only record what it isn't. We know it isn't safe or Euclid. We know it isn't round or square or green or silver. We know it isn't stupid. We know it isn't alone. But what we do know is that it is weak. It's weak because it's the only antimemetic agent in our possession which has a physical entry in the files. We have paper records of the thing. We have containment procedures. Mm-hmm. It's not safe, which means it's dangerous, but it's contained, Marion explains. 05-8 blinks. You have procedures where? She points at her head. Then how many other antimemes are there? How much more dangerous do they get? 10 that I know of, Marion says. Statistically, at least 5 more that I don't know of. This does not count the antimemetic entities freely roaming the halls, not under containment. There are at least 2 in this room with us right now. Don't look. I said don't look. It's pointless. The 05 controls himself, keeping his focused attention on Marion. Clay doesn't fare so well, and does a quick sweep of the room, even checking behind his back. Making an ass out of himself, essentially. He finds nothing. He looks baffled. There's an invisible monster which follows me around and likes to eat my memories, Marion explains patiently. SCP-4987. Don't look it up. It's not there. I've learned to manage it. It's like a demanding pet. I produce tasty memories on purpose, so it doesn't eat something important, like my passwords, or how to make coffee. And what's the other one? With a nod from the O5, she goes to her bag. This time she pulls out a gun and shoots Clay twice in the heart. More aghast than in pain, Clay collapses sharply against the bookcase behind him. Pulling his head around to face Marion, he manages, "How did you know?" She shoots, aims more carefully, and shoots him a third time, this time in the head. O5-8 again does an impressive job of not reacting. "That's Clay's gun," he deadpans. "You stole it from him." "It's tricky to steal a firearm this heavy from someone without them noticing," she explains, unloading it carefully and setting it down. "But stealing a firearm, then stealing the memory of the theft is a little easier. Like I said, a pet. Some pets are dumb enough that they can be trained." "Yes," O5 says evenly. "That much I guessed, but why?" "Because you were supposed to be taking Class W Domestics." Marion says, "You can't just skip class of domestics. I've tried. You can postpone a dose, but you can't forget. Not unless someone actively prevents you from taking it. There's only one person who would get close enough to do that, and that's your assistant. And remember when I asked how long he'd been working here? He didn't answer," says the O5. "I thought you were being rhetorical. He doesn't work here. He's an anti-meme. Since when do you have an assistant? You don't have an assistant, Brent. Look at this office. It's got one desk. You've got a receptionist outside. She's the one who screens your calls and schedules your meeting. Where does Clay sit? Where does he fit? Don't blame yourself. You're human, and these things are redaction incarnate. You need to think like a space alien to get around them." The O5 asks a question which in any other workplace would be absurd. "Is he dead?" "Maybe," Marion says. "I can put his corpse in our research queue, and we'll see what we can when we open them up. There's duality there, though. They're like parallel universe sharing the same space. It's conceptual versus concrete, figurative versus physical. It's very unusual for things to cross over. I don't know what Clay was, but he had a human body, which instantly makes him weird, even by our standards. As ever, the search for stalemate continues. I will let you know if we ever get any closer." "Any side effect of these pills," says the O5-8. "Nausea, dramatically increased risk of pancreatic cancer, and a very bad dream." And that was We Need to Talk About 55. Thank you for listening, if anyone's even been listening.